Welcome to Current Situation, your Palmetto State Political Pulse. I'm your host, Joshua Gale, alongside South Carolina State House Representative Jordan Pace. Every week, our goal is to help you navigate the complex world of politics through biblically conservative perspectives. In today's short episode, you'll learn why calling your representatives matters, uncover the effects of the GOP tax bill on taxpayers, dig into the controversy of robbing Peter to pay off Hollywood, and explore the debate over eliminating earmarks, and stay informed on issues shaping our state's future. Jordan, good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, Josh. I'm doing great. How are you?
Awesome. I'm doing really well. I know you've got a busy schedule, so I want to jump right in and go ahead and discuss. We've got some victory here. We always
Yeah.
urge our listeners to contact your state representatives, whether your House representative, your local city representatives, and your state legislators and senators. This time, South Carolinians did that, and what was the outcome of that?
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, the House leadership had this big rollout of this big comprehensive tax bill, and they called it a tax cut. They had all this fanfare about it, press conference, whole thing, and I was skeptical. It's probably the nice way to say it. So we actually did the math, and then it turns out it wasn't a tax cut for most of the state. The vast majority of South Carolinians would see significantly higher taxes if they were to have passed their plan unchanged. And so we sounded the alarm last week. The Freedom Caucus and frankly the media grabbed on this too once we kind of tipped them off about it. And people started calling. And we urged folks, hey, call your representatives. Like you said, we say it all the time, call them. And thousands of phone calls were made or were received by House leadership in the span of like 48 hours. So we started sounding the alarm on Monday. They had a subcommittee meeting on Tuesday, and the tax bill 4216 passed unanimously through that subcommittee. And then the calls really started rolling in. By the time the committee met again later that week, they stalled the bill out and they adjourned debate on the bill. So basically they said, we're not going to take the bill up right now. We're going to work on it some more. We've heard some concerns from people. Yeah, pretty big concerns that taxes were going to go up hundreds of dollars a year for most of the state. And so right now that bill's on life support. I think leadership still, there's a good graphic for, I think that's the single filer, if you're a single filer person, where your taxes would go up or down. It doesn't break even until later. That single filer, that might be joint actually, for joint filers. Either way, you get the picture. So I think House leadership still wants to pass something like it, but they've heard from the masses that, hey, they don't want a tax hike. We don't want a tax hike. And that's frankly what Republicans and conservatives run on, is not raising taxes. We want to cut government and so we can cut taxes. The disconnect with House leadership for many years now has been their absolute allergy to cutting spending. And we've said all along, hey, we can't significantly cut taxes without significantly cutting spending. So great job, everybody who called. Don't lose sight of this, though. My fear is once the uproar kind of calms down, they might try to jam it through. It will still have to go through committee, and we'd have a little bit of warning about that to resound the alarm bells if they were to do it before it got to the House floor.
Right. So, this comes on the tail of, you and I discussing a lot of the budget for the year. And then one of the emails that you guys released from the Freedom Caucus was called "Robbing Peter to Pay Off Hollywood."
Yeah.
That caught my attention. Can you tell our listeners about that?
Yeah. So one of the reasons they can't cut taxes, that even though most of the state and most of the voters want to cut taxes, is because the state has been paying tens of millions of dollars in cash rebates, not just tax credits, but like actual cash rebates to Hollywood film production companies that film things in South Carolina. And this isn't like local people making local films about local issues. I don't think that would be a good use of taxpayer dollars either, but at least there can be an argument there that they're supporting local, grassroots type stuff. Now, there are minimum thresholds to qualify for these rebates and credits and stuff of millions of dollars has to be spent. So it is only going to these woke left wing Hollywood film companies to come and make things like the Outer Banks or the Righteous Gemstones here in Charleston. There are a few others around the state over the last few years that have benefited from it. But what they in the same committee meeting where they shoved off in the tax hike bill, later on they approved a bill that would more than triple the amount of incentives for Hollywood to come here to, I think, cap it at like $45 million. This is housed within the Department of Recreation and Tourism. That doesn't make any sense at all. But that's one of the things we tried to cut in the budget was um, this huge chunk of taxpayer money going to these companies. And if you go look and see like what's being produced by these, I've never seen an episode of Righteous Gemstones, but I went to IMDb and checked it and saw the parental guidance section there, and it looked pretty heinous.
It's perverted.
Yeah.
It's mocking God, and mocking the church, his bride, which we know is like, I don't. Danny McBride is a perverted mind. He lives here in Charleston. Great that it brings money into the economy, but we're not paying millions of dollars to mock our own God, to create some perverted, nasty television that HBO loves, but also making fun of the South, making fun
Yeah.
of Southern Christians, and in such a perverted, nasty, disgusting way.
But we're paying for it.
We're paying for it. That's
and the argument
part.
the argument from folks is like, well, it brings jobs and this and that. Like I don't know if people are seeing what I'm seeing. Again, I work in commercial real estate, so and industrial stuff and retail and manufacturing. Volvo has 1,000 job openings right now. Boeing is hiring like everybody's hiring.
Okay, being an extra on Righteous Gemstones may pay you $50-$80 a day before taxes, and then they're using places like renting out our Coliseum and convention center and paying pennies on the dollar so that we can't use our own convention center because it's turned into a movie set. So
even the economic argument there falls flat. So not only is it smut and gross, like it's not creating the jobs that it is creating. The studies that I've seen have not shown like a dollar for dollar return.
No,
in the way that they've go ahead.
Production crews come from Atlanta.
Yeah.
Actors come from Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, except for like one or two that live here in Charleston that have like minor roles. Okay, so you're paying tax money out, leaving South Carolina to go pay production crews who are from other states, renting equipment from other states.
Right.
Atlanta is the Hollywood of the Eastern United States. It's not all here in Charleston, and so we're literally paying people from another state and sending our money to our neighbor to produce these shows and these films.
And the reason that in Charleston specifically, the reason they come here to film in Charleston isn't because of the incentives. Like they would be here regardless. Like take the Outer Banks, because they need a coastal setting,
correct,
with a decent amount of infrastructure. So they'd be here anyway. We're just giving them more of our taxpayer money, which is why leadership can't find the money to lower taxes.
Correct.
Yeah. So this is it blew my mind that they would, on the heels of trying to raise taxes on 70% of the state, in the same meeting they were trying to give more of that money from the lowest 70% that they were trying to raise taxes on, to woke Hollywood film productions. Absolutely out of touch.
And if anybody with a brain would know, Outer Banks, you can't film there. There's not enough infrastructure. Wilmington's already got a couple shows going on, but they're not as beautiful as Charleston, so not going to work really that well either. So Charleston is their bet here. Yeah. So moving on from that, I've got some do you want me to bring up these other charts here on talking about budget?
Yeah, it was just to show everybody the budget has increased. I think astronomically is the right word for this over the past decade. There's a good line. There we go. The blue line is the general appropriation. That's the how much state money aside from federal money and other stuff, just state tax money. How that's gone up compared to um, a formula that the South Carolina Policy Council put together that would have included population growth and inflation since 2013. So start in 2013. If you go by that Policy Council formula of just keeping it baseline, but adding enough to make up for population growth and inflation, we should be at 9.5 billion. Instead, we're at 12.4. So since 2013, the last 12 years, the budget has more than doubled, like more than 50%, or more than doubled from 6.1 to 12.4. It is out of control. And the Doge SC guys, are this new startup down here in the Low Country, they put a stat out that I found pretty crazy that Florida, which has one of the biggest populations in the country, the state of Florida, for every 1,000 residents, they have 4 state employees. 4.
Wow.
In South Carolina, for every 1,000 residents, we have 15 state employees.
The fact is, the state doesn't even know that.
Yeah, 4 times, and that does not include contractors. That doesn't include state contractors, and I know that for a fact because I asked the Department of Administration specifically that question: do y'all keep up with how many 1099 like state contractors these agencies and such have? Oh no, we don't keep up with that at all. They only keep up with direct employees. So it is a huge amount of money to the point of our state's economy. The second largest segment of our state's GDP or our state's economy is government. Yes. Which, if you're actually honestly looking at economy, that means for every dollar that a state employee gets, that's actually taking money out of the economy. And sometimes that's okay. Like, we need police, we need firefighters, we need there are necessary services there, prison guards and things like that. But that is a cost to the economy, not a driver to the economy. And that's where there's a disconnect there as well. Point is, the budget's too big. We need to shrink it. But because of these Hollywood film bills, because that's just leadership's total allergy to cutting spending, we seem to be stuck. Except, if you're talking about the earmarks, last Thursday, out of the Senate, last Wednesday out of the Senate, we had a report from the Senate Finance Committee that had been meeting for a couple of days. Senator Peeler, who was chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, said that there would be no earmarks added to the budget in the Senate's version of the budget. This is like a bomb went off in Columbia, rhetorically. For those who don't know, earmarks are special projects that legislators can request. They put their name on it and they say, we want $500,000 for a new fire engine, or that would be a legitimate use, or $900,000 to go start a podcast for the South Carolina Football Hall of Fame. That was really in the budget last year. And as far as I can tell, they have not started or done even a single episode of the Leadership Minute is what it's supposed to be for. Those are what earmarks are. They're totally unaccountable. Some of them for good things, fire trucks, police, etc. A lot of it for just junk, to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. I think last year it was $385 million in earmarks. The year before that was closer to $600 million. That had been the trend for at least a decade, that the House would send the initial budget over to the Senate with no earmarks. The Senate would add their earmarks and send it back to us. And then the House would check that, add the House earmarks to it, send it back to the Senate, and we wind up in conference committee in May. That had been the pattern for about a decade. Well, the reason that the Senate would add their earmarks first is because this entity within the state called the Board of Economic Advisors, that will not be on the test. You don't have to remember that. But the BEA is who forecasts how much revenue the state is going to have. That's how they do the budget. They guess at how much money the state's going to bring in via taxes, and then base things on that. Well, usually in April, their report will come back and say, "Hey, we think there's going to be $100 million more dollars, or $300 million more, or more in some years, more than they forecasted." Well, the announcement about earmarks came out on Wednesday. Thursday morning, the BEA met for their April meeting, and that afternoon they released a report, and they're not predicting any new money. So the reason why there's no earmarks is not because anybody got some like great political instincts or, hey, we hear you people, we don't want to spend any more money. It's because there is no more extra money to put toward those earmarks. Now, that wasn't put out in press releases, but that's something we're going to be talking about over the next week or two. Is there's no money for earmarks. While we're appreciative, I'm appreciative that maybe this means earmarks will go away because they are wildly unaccountable. That seems to be the real reason, is there's no extra money to do that. But what would happen? Folks remember back a couple of years when we had in 2023, 1.6 billion, I think was the unanticipated, but 1.3 billion of that extra money. It's not really extra; it's the taxpayers' money. But 1.3 of that could have went to lowering the income tax by 1.5% to 2% of the current system. Instead, we sent that to electric vehicle startup, Scout Motors, which is, from all the pictures I've seen, been not going so great. It's been, not moving fast. They filled in like 100 acres of wetlands. That's gone forever as far as wetlands goes. For an electric vehicle company, where electric vehicles, and particularly electric trucks, are not doing well as far as sales. So bad investments. The whole idea of government investment, and it's kind of where we can circle back up and kind of end on. During the budget discussion a few weeks ago, the Democrat chairman of the Economic Development Subcommittee, we have a Democrat chair of the Budget Committee, and a Republican supermajority, so that's one thing. But what he kept harping on when I was up there saying, we want to cut spending to the Arts Commission so they don't give away grants for LGBTQ plus whatever stuff, things that are antithetical to us, or the climate change stuff, or the Film Commission, economic development, where they're giving money away to the Volkswagens and the et cetera, et cetera. His retort was always, well, these are state investments. The state is investing in these things. Biblically, the state doesn't have a responsibility to invest. Like, you and I have a responsibility to invest for our family, our family's benefit, our neighbors' benefit. Like, we as individuals can invest, companies invest, organizations invest. That's not the government's responsibility. Like, the government's responsibility is to take as little money from the people as necessary to provide government necessary services, like fixing roads, maintaining infrastructure, delivering justice through effective courts and law enforcement, providing public safety. K through 12 education in South Carolina is a constitutional requirement. Things that most people I talk to would say we're not doing a great job at because we're spending money on all this other stuff. And that's really the baseline difference between groups of legislators in Columbia, whether they be Republican or Democrat, is kind of immaterial. That philosophical difference is the stark, this way versus that. And we want to tell the truth about it. I mean, that's
right.
Where we've seen, whether it's been this tax thing, Scout, the budget itself, earmarks. Just this past week, politicians need to tell the truth to the people and not try to spin their way out of things, because the people are starting to pick up on it.
Yeah. So we've got Doge, South Carolina. I'll put that link in there. You want to learn more about what they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm going to include some of these graphs. If you'd like to look at these graphs, they'll be in the show notes as well.
Oh, and one last thing, Josh, talking about, let's end this on a high note. Another place where people called and their senators heard them was this Dr. Simmer appointment for the Department of Public Health. The guy with the mask who was pushing all the Fauci stuff and during COVID and telling 6-month-old babies they need to get the COVID shot, all that other stuff. His nomination was voted down in Medical Affairs Committee 12-5. It is still technically going to come before the Senate in the next week or two, I think, because it has to. But I don't know of any instance ever in South Carolina history where the committee voted it down, a nomination down, and the Senate ignored that. So the calls worked there too. Good job, people calling. Your voices can be heard.
Awesome. One other note put in here, it's more of a local to North Charleston, where I live, but TravisWalthall.com. Travis is for a special election here in City Council in North Charleston. We had 3 City Council members all facing criminal fraud, federal fraud charges. 2 have resigned and pleaded guilty. One more, Michael Brown, has pleaded non-guilty and will not surrender his seat until a judge makes a verdict. But Travis is running for one of the seats in that district. I'm going to put his website in the show notes. This is a very quick turnaround. The voting day is May 31st, but Travis needs our help to raise some funds to get some signs. He's door knocking everywhere, and very committed to integrity and leading and uniting the community in his area of North Charleston. So kudos to him. I'll put that in there. If you've got some extra Starbucks money, send it over to Travis. And let's see some more conservative minds in South Carolina in leadership.
Yeah, that'd be a huge swing for North Charleston.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think Todd Olds may take the other section over there, District 5, I believe it is. I think it's 3 and 5 that are up right now, and eventually probably. But anyways, we thank you guys for tuning in to Current Situation. We hope this was helpful for you to figure out what's going on here at the state level in South Carolina. Stay tuned. We're going to be dropping some more information in the coming weeks of what you need to know heading into summer. And thanks again for listening, Jordan. Thanks for carving out time to keep us all informed of what's going on.